Daily Devotion with Pastor Balla for December 24th, 2020 from Luke chapter 2, the registration. Verse 1, In those days a decree went out from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be registered. This was the first registration when Quirinius was governor of Syria. Luke adds the names like Caesar Augustus and Quirinius into the Bible, as ancient history reminds us that these were real people during the time of the birth of Jesus. These names add a special verification of the following information. That means we know that it took place during this time. The birth of Jesus didn't just happen in some obscure past. It happened at a particular time and moment. What's interesting is I've been using the ESV version, the English Standard Version of the Bible, and it uses the term registration. We may be familiar with the King James Version of the Bible, which uses the term census. It's pretty much the same thing. Both these words kind of point to a registration, a recording of a name, guess what? For tax purposes. Not that at that moment Joseph had to shell out money for himself and Mary. That would probably occur later. But their names would be added to a list and they would be counted later for tax purposes. Verse 4, And Joseph also went up from Galilee, from the town of Nazareth to Judea, to the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house and lineage of David, to be registered with Mary, his betrothed, who was with child. This would now bring the Holy Family, so to speak, to Bethlehem, which would fulfill the prophecy of God from Micah chapter 5, verse 2. But you, O Bethlehem Ephrathah, who are too little to be among the clans of Judah, from you shall come forth for me one who is to be ruler in Israel, whose coming forth is from of old, from ancient days. It's interesting, embedded in this prophecy is like a reminder that the one who is coming is kind of an old one, the old one, God himself. And the prophecy is even just as old, coming from in the book of Genesis. So all of these old prophecies are now going to be fulfilled and it's going to be filled in Bethlehem. Verse 6, And while they were there, the time came for her to give birth, and she gave birth to her firstborn son, and wrapped him in swaddling cloths, and laid him in a manger, because there was no place for them in the inn. While we may have visions of Mary giving birth with no one around her except for Joseph and maybe a few animals, my guess is that probably was not the case. The women of the town would have seen Mary being extremely pregnant and would have assisted. Sure, there was no room in the inn. Why? Because there was a lot of people gathering in the town at that moment because of the census and the registration. But I don't think people of that time, and strangely enough, nor people in this time, would abandon a woman who's now going to go into labor. One other interesting note is, when would Mary and Joseph have gotten to Bethlehem? On the day that she gave birth? More than likely not. More than likely they arrived in Bethlehem, had a time to get settled. Because there was no room in the inn because of the census, they would have had to look for accommodations. They would have had time to find a nice quiet place where they could have some privacy for the birth of Jesus. Another little side note, that sometimes as we take a look at various artists' pictures of this Holy Family traveling to Bethlehem, you may see Mary riding a donkey. And while it sounds nice, a donkey was really transportation mode for richer people. The average person would have walked from town to town. But again, you might have been saying that's not fair for Mary to be walking. She's about ready to deliver. Remember, they probably came to Bethlehem fairly early. And the people at that time would have been used to walking for miles and miles to travel from town to town. So all of that would not necessarily have been unexpected. It would have been part of the norm. Join me again tomorrow as we hear about the shepherds. God's peace and many blessings be with you. Thank you for watching, and please take an opportunity to share this message with others. If you have enjoyed these daily devotions, please consider making a donation to Peace Lutheran Church, 24024 West Main Street, Plainfield, Illinois, 60544. Thank you again for watching.